Hey there, it's Melissa Brunetti, and welcome to the Mind Your Own Karma podcast.
Hey there, Karma Crew. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Mind Your Own Karma, the Adoption Chronicles. Today I have Ashley Allec on the show today. She is an adoptee, birth mother, and an adoptive parent. After growing through foster care and being adopted by a Baptist family at the age of 4, she saw a lot of trauma in many forms. She was surrounded by adoptees and always knew adoption was special. So when she found out she was pregnant, she knew that adoption was the only answer. While there was plenty of drama that 9 months, she was able to choose a great family and was comfortable with her decision. She says that most of her memories have faded with time due to mental trauma. Ashley went through postpartum depression and the darkest moments of her life and lost herself for a few years. Then, 11 years after she gave her child up for adoption, she was offered the opportunity to adopt her child back. Ashley adopted her son on June 21st, 2024. The most beautiful day in her family's history book. Here is my interview with Ashley. So we are welcoming Ashley to the show today. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. So you have quite a unique story, and I'm super curious to dive in and just kind of see how all of that has shaped your views on adoption. You're an adoptee, so let's start there and just tell us about what you know about why you were relinquished.
I was born in 1990 in Vancouver. I was removed from my mother about a year old, placed in a couple of foster homes, 3 or 4 of them. And then the last foster mom I had, she was the foster home that took in hundreds of kids, and I mean hundreds of kids. But we had a very close connection, and her cousin was looking to adopt, and that eventually became my adoptive parents. So who was the last foster mom, she just became Aunt Becky, which was kind of cool. I always knew I was adopted. It was something that was just always talked about. So my sister was a separate adoption on her own. She was adopted from the hospital. My adoptive mother was adopted. Her sister was adopted.
Wow.
And I believe it was my grandma as well that was adopted. So it felt like it ran in the family, even though you weren't related. So
Yeah.
I always knew. I didn't know all the details, but it was an in-depth story to say the least.
Yeah. So what was it like growing up in that adoptive family?
I actually became a pastor's daughter instantly. He was a local assistant pastor at one of the churches here in town, and there's a lot of religious views that became the normal, and it was spare the rod. And it was, I understood it, and it was more of the fear of it, not the teachings of it. So that's just how you were brought up. So every kid got it. You saw every kid getting in trouble at school or whatever. And I was in a private school. So it was very church related. My entire life was church. I mean, every single Sunday, almost all day, every day. Saturdays, you go bus calling. Monday, Tuesday was church school. And then Wednesday, we went soul winning with the teenagers. And then we would go to church afterwards. And then Thursday, there was a dinner that everybody would go soul winning. So I was a part of that. Fridays was some sort of teenage activity with the church. And then Saturday was bus calling. So it was everything related to church. I wore my nylons in 100-degree weather. Shirts up to here.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. I would always tell friends if they didn't understand what church was, go Mormon, but we weren't considered Mormon.
Yeah.
It was just a different belief. It was very strict to the law. So
yeah. Oh my gosh.
It was a very complete change.
Right. And as you grew up, did you kind of stray from that?
It was one of those that it would get to points at home that knowing that you were adopted, And then in some situations be like, why did God do this to me?
Mm-hmm.
Why was I put here to then suffer whatever adoption trauma? And then now this, it was like I felt God wasn't listening. And then it just became the distance. Well, I don't understand what you're believing in because he's not saving anybody at this point.
Yeah.
If he can't listen to my cries, then
Yeah.
we move on. So and then by my teenage years, I was rebelling to my own way. I was sneaking out of the house. I was messing with my boyfriend. We had moved to Michigan when I was about 15, 16 years old. And then by 17, I was already sneaking out of the house. But when I turned 18, my mother would go through everything of mine, everything. When you grow up in church in a Bible college, they do white glove inspections. So my mother would do that to us.
Oh, wow.
And she would find my love notes to the boyfriend or the whatever I was trying to hide. Well, she found the morning after pill in my wallet.
Oh, boy.
I was in the middle of class at school at the church, and my mother barges in, drags me out by the arm, takes me to the principal's office and my dad's office. And it was like, I got kicked out that day. It was my senior year. It was September. I had just started school. My senior year. I got kicked out of school and I wasn't pregnant. It was just the morning after pill. It was just the fact that I had sex, and in a church school, that's a no-no. So I was kicked out.
Wow.
Then we would have meetings with the pastor of the church, because with my dad being a pastor, I just gave them a bad name. I just destroyed their character, and they are no longer a good picture perfect family to have. So I felt like I was not just destroying my life, but I just destroyed theirs. Dad is looked at as this uncontrollable man that doesn't know how to control his children. And then the conversation got brought up to go to a girl's home. I lost it. And I'm like, you are not putting me in girls' homes. I know nothing but horror stories. I know what happens, and I'm not about to be one. So.
And how old were you? Like 17?
I just turned 18.
You just turned 18.
So I knew I was an adult and I get to make these decisions. So middle of the day was a Saturday afternoon. My mom is upstairs in her room. My sister's in her room. Dad's at church. And I just walked out the basement door with the clothes on my back, and I never looked back.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they would come in like where they thought they knew I was. They would have the police show up. They'd have friends of the church show up. I knew I wasn't going to go back. So that ending was horrible. But then,
where did you go?
I just went to a friend's house. I went to the boyfriend's girl that I knew from church, and I stayed with her and her mom. And then it's like the way people would just start banging on the door. I know Ashley's in there. I know Ashley's in there. And I'm like, with the religious upbringing I was brought up with to how these people are acting now, you knew there was something like wrong with this picture. Nobody just goes banging people's doors down or getting police involved. I felt like it was like gone to a whole different level than just, okay, our teenager ran away, whatever.
Yeah.
Not that I would expect you not to care. That's not what I'm saying, but you know what I mean? Like, above and beyond.
It's very escalated.
But then I lived with my boyfriend for a while, and I was young and dumb. I'm not gonna lie. I was a free church girl that knew exactly what was out there, and I had fun doing it. Then by 19, I was roaming around one morning, and I'm like, oh my God. Back when we still had Kmart's, I pulled into a parking lot of a Kmart, and I'm roaming around, and I'm like, oh my God, I've never taken a pregnancy test. How funny would that be? And I'm like, I don't even know what you do with them. I've seen them in like movies of like, oh my God, we're pregnant. And I'm like, how do you know you're pregnant? It's a stick. Like, what do you do? So I finally read the box, and I'm like, oh, you pee on it. Okay. So I stole it. I took the box and I went straight back to the Kmart bathroom, and I peed on 2 sticks, and both of them said yes. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I go and steal another one, go right back to the bathroom, drink a bunch of water, and I pee on the next one, and it said no. And I'm like, okay, now you're like what's going on? Okay, it's false positive. It was a cute joke. Let's get out of here.
Yeah.
Then I eventually took another one and it said yes. And I'm like, oh God, what am I going to do? So I called my aunt here in Washington, let her know. And I'm like, I can't tell mom and dad this. Like, not alone am I just a runaway child, preacher's daughter at that, but I'm now pregnant, not married. I've just done the cardinal rule of all rule
Really done it
breaking.
now.
So my aunt is the one who called and told my parents and broke the news. So that kind of relieved a little bit of the stress. But it was kind of one of those that I was by myself. Me and my boyfriend had just broken up. So I'm by myself. So I'm supposed to be moving out, 19, no job, no friends, because all my friends were his friends. I'm still only a year out of this.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, adoption is the only choice. I mean, it runs in my blood at this point. So I can't take care of a child. And I'm like, okay, well, I tried to make amends with my parents. So I moved down with them while I was pregnant for a little bit.
How was that?
It was really sweet at first because I think they tried. For a split second, I think there was effort. And then because my parents lived with my grandparents, my mom's parents at the time.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not just living, she grew up Baptist too. Her dad is like a Bible teacher at the college at Hiles Anderson. So it was a big deal. It was like a religious tradition here. I've now just disappointed my grandfather, not just my parents. And
Yeah.
I'm living under his roof. They didn't
Right.
like that. So there's a program at the church where they would take in women. They would live in like a home, and it was more or less for addicts and, getting you out of your bad habits kind of group. And I'm like, I'm not a druggie. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm just pregnant. That's all this is. I'm going to church with you. Like, I am making a solid effort here.
Right.
And there was one night after church that we sat down with my grandparents, and my grandpa is the one who's like, okay, well, we're going to send you to this home. I'm like 6 months pregnant. I'm like already protruding. You can tell that there's a baby here. I think it was also in a sense embarrassing to walk in with my parents at church too, because I'm now their prodigal daughter who's now pregnant. Okay, we told you so.
Yeah.
So it was also the shame of that. I've now just done what my mother's done, what her mother has done. And it's like, okay, well, we obviously didn't break any traditions here. So I ran away from my grandparents' house again. The ex-boyfriend, he understood what my life was like growing up with my parents, and he's like, I don't even want to see you down there pregnant with them. So he came all the way down, and we drove 6 hours back up to Michigan, and I lived with his cousin. And I still at this point, I'm like 6, 7 months pregnant, and I have no idea what I'm doing with this child. Adoption is still the option there, but abortion is 100% out of the question at this point. Even if I thought of it, it's done.
Yeah.
So I'm still talking adoption. I'd gone through a couple of notebooks, and that just felt like you're looking through a magazine. What dinner do I want to have tonight? What recipe do I want to look up? There was no connection. I
You
mean,
mean with a potential parents?
yes,
Okay.
going through a book of parents that are looking to adopt, because I was going to go through an agency, and I got sent a notebook to go through. And you see, they're beautiful stories. Like, I completely understand why I would pick you, but so's the next couple, and so's the next couple, and so's the next couple. And then it felt like guilty because I'll pick one, and now I've just destroyed 10 other families.
Yeah.
It was like a different side of guilt. For a few seconds, I thought of myself. And then it was like, that was cute. You would never give yourself a chance. Okay, let's just continue with what you've been told you need to do. Oh, and while I was supposed to be at the girls' home that my grandparents were going to send me to, I was not going to know who my baby was going to. I was not going to hold him, touch him. They were just going to take him and leave, and that was the end of it. And you were supposed to forget about it, and that was that.
Yeah.
And I knew that was not going to happen. So I ended up deciding going with the ex-boyfriend's sister. She had been looking to adopt. They wanted more kids. I knew the family very, very well. They were religious, but not to the level that I grew up. So it was kind of like, I still find that there can be balance in that and structure in that. So I understand where that's coming from. I just don't need you to my extreme. So I'm like, that's a good compromise. Mom and dad in the picture. I think I found my picture perfect. They lived in Indiana at the time. So I drove down there about a week before I gave birth. I saw a doctor and he's like, okay, we'll induce you in a week, come in at 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, and we'll induce you, and that'll be that. I'm like, okay, well, this is easy enough. Go into the hospital. I was induced, and the easiest birth there will ever be. I was literally laughing him out. I had the epidural, so I didn't feel anything. A couple of contractions at the beginning, and then just easy peasy. I was out of the hospital same day. It was like, okay, well, I mean, I didn't have morning sickness. It was the easiest pregnancy ever. And then all of a sudden, you drive home empty-handed.
Yeah.
So the night before I gave birth, I was sitting in the hotel room with the ex-boyfriend and his parents, so the new grandparents, and they're all asleep. And I go to the bathroom and I lose it. I could not sleep that night. I was texting a friend who was also in mind to adopt the baby, and I'm like, maybe I should have chose you. Then I was second guessing every decision I've ever made at this point. And I sang him to sleep. I swore up and down that I will be a different person when you come and find me. Like, I know that there is a day that will come that I will see you again. I don't know how, I don't know when, but it was like I was setting that in motion at that night right there on the bathroom floor. And then I gave birth. I think I saw him for a second, and I knew I didn't want to hold him right away. I didn't want that connection to be set because I knew he was going to be going to a different family. Just from the stories I had been told about adoptions like that, I wanted to give them that. And then all of a sudden you hear the scream distantly walk off into the distance, and it breaks me every time. But the doctor, he had never experienced an adoption. He had never experienced this kind of situation before. And he broke down with me. He sat on that bed and bawled, and we just held hands, and he was quiet. He was exactly what I needed at that moment.
Yeah. So was this a closed adoption then?
Yes, papers were already signed before I even went into the hospital, and I thought I was making the right decision. Like I felt like there were no other options. I wasn't working. I didn't have a place to live. I didn't have anything to give to this child.
And was this ex-boyfriend that you're talking about, is that the father of this baby?
That was my thought at the time until much later down the road, and I find out that no. But I think it was, he knew that. I didn't know that. He knew that he wasn't the father. So I'm like, I don't know how so the whole pregnancy, he was like denied it. And I'm like, okay, well, this is making it worse. Now I don't have a dad. Now I'm just a horse sleeping around. Like, that's not what I was doing. But I did it to an extent, like wasn't willy-nilly. But then much later, well, we had agreed that it was going to be, I'd get pictures, I'd be able to talk to him, I'd somehow know in a distance, be Aunt Ashley, whoever I was going to be. But after that, I started to get into a lot of trouble, and I'm in a lot of trouble. Went to jail. Then I just got into too much trouble where it was like, if I don't leave now, I'm never getting out of this. So I got on a Greyhound and I came all the way back to Michigan. or all the way back to Washington. 3 days on a bus. And now I'm married. I have two stepkids, or two bonus kids, as I call them. Um, we've had just purchased our house. And then all of a sudden I'm sitting at work in the parking lot eating lunch. And I get a text from the adoptive mom. Oh, hey, I'm going to tell him he's adopted. And I'm like, he's 11 years old. You've never told him he's adopted?
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, okay, well, you do understand that when you do this, you're opening a can of worms. Like I've been able to connect with my biological family. I've met all my siblings, my mom. I will never meet my dad. That will never happen, by choice. But
Why was
yeah,
she telling you that? Why was she telling you that she was about to tell him?
in hindsight, now I think she was getting frustrated with what she was dealing with. There was a lot of behavior problems, there was a lot of anger problems, but that's where I'm now looking at it in hindsight, and it would have been like, no offense, but not everybody can just take in a foster kid or take in an adoptive child. There,
Yeah.
you have to be well aware of what you're walking into before you're just like, oh yeah, I want a baby.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sweetheart, it's not rainbows and sunshine all the time.
Yeah.
There's underlying drama or trauma that you have no clue what is about to happen, let alone keep it from him for 11 years.
Right.
Oh yeah, let's just drop a bomb in the middle of his
Yeah.
basic life. Like, no offense, but that's what you've just done. Anyways, she told him, of course he threw a fit and all hell broke loose, and I need to meet my mom. And I'm like, I told you so.
Yeah.
But then she sent him out to visit. They're in Michigan. I'm in Washington. They sent him on a plane at 11, 12 years old, all by himself, to
Oh
come
my
meet a complete
gosh.
stranger.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, are we dumping this? What are we
What's
doing
happening?
here?
Yeah. What's happening?
We
There's a child
met.
involved here.
He was here for like 2 weeks. We had a blast. We got to know each other. Um, but then at the like 2 nights before he was supposed to leave, I don't know what's supposed to happen at this point. Send him on a plane and be like, okay, I'll never see you again, or I'll
Right.
be in Ashley in Washington. What am I supposed to be to you? So I tried, I made an attempt to have a conversation, as in, you understand that our relationship can't be what you picture in your head it to be. Because we all
Mm.
know, as adoptees, we know exactly what it's like. We're like, I don't look like any of you. I don't talk like any of you. I I was always told that I looked like my dad, but we were never related. And that he would cough it up too. Well, yeah, if we live together, we kind of get the same characteristics.
Mm.
Oh, okay, yeah. But I still don't look like you.
Yeah.
The parents both have brown eyes and they have a blue-eyed kid and a green-eyed kid. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But then by the end of it, he goes back to Michigan, threw a fit again, and then the conversation got brought up of, she's initiating all of this pushing and pushing. And she's like, okay, well, what if I send him out for like 6 months and I give you guardianship? And I'm like, okay, so we're gonna do this for 6 months and then send him back? Like, what are we doing to
Yeah.
this kid?
Exactly.
Then she's well, like, well, let's try a school year and see what happens. I'm like, okay, and then what? Send him back? And then it just became, oh, well, he wants you to be mom. He already started calling me mom when he was here just to visit the first
Mm.
time. And then she sends him out, and it was supposed to be a guardianship for like 6 months, and then we'll talk about adoption. And then when she had spoken to a lawyer, um, they're like, oh, well, he just needs to be there for a year, and then we can just push the adoption. Michigan didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. So we had to do the entire adoption here in Washington with an attorney here, and it was just finalized in June. So he's officially mine. I got to adopt my own son back.
That is so crazy. That is so
It is
crazy.
a wild ride.
How old is he now?
Just turned 14.
Oh, wow. How is he doing?
I think it's because we're about to start freshman year in high
Mm,
school. So it's new and exciting. It's much bigger than where he came from. So they're in a very, very small town in Michigan. Like he's shocked that we have a couple thousand that graduate every year. He's like, I don't think we had more than like 100.
yeah.
And
Oh
I'm like, honey,
gosh.
if we're in a different state, it's a really big place. So it's a culture change, but I think
Yeah.
he's adjusting good.
Yeah. So how long has he been with you now?
A year and a half. Yeah, it was a year in March, a year in March. So year and a
Okay.
half now.
Wow. So let's back up a little bit. How do you think being adopted yourself like impacted your decision making on your own child's adoption?
I did not know in depth what happened with my adoption at the time. I do now, but I think I had been fed this beautiful love story of adoption. You were always supposed to be ours. Um, they made it a very religious thing. God gave you to us.
Mm,
He knew that you needed us and we needed you. So I believed all of that, which I do think that there was a lot of intention behind it. But at the same point, I don't think I go back to I don't think people are aware of what adoption means and what it means to bring it into your home. I don't think my mother had gone through her own adoption trauma. She's
mm,
never spoken about it. I've never heard it before.
yeah.
So I don't know if it was closed adoption, if she knows anything about it. But I think if it wasn't a religious state, she probably should have gone to therapy. I think there was a lot of underlying.
Stressed? Anxious? Discover the healing power of somatic mindful guided imagery. Reconnect with your mind, body, and spirit, and unlock your true potential. Feel calm, confident, and in control. Visit somatichealingjourneys.com to start your journey towards a healthier, happier you.
And my dad had great intentions. Like I was a daddy's girl through and through, but I also came with a lot of baggage. I was the 3, 4 hour tantrum on the kitchen floor. I mean, I moved into their home when I was 3 years old. I came in with
Hmm.
every kind of trauma you can imagine. I was actually just going through my adoption paperwork that I received a couple of years back because I started doing some digging because I knew there was something and I needed to meet
Mm,
my family. I had gone through, I don't remember how I did it because it was so long ago, but I got my name at least, and then I started just looking up the last name on Facebook, and all of a sudden I came across this name, and I'm like, wait, you have the same last name. Wait, you kind of look like me. Okay, well,
oh
let's
wow.
just guess. So I just sent a message, and he's like, oh my God, yes, we've been looking for you. Like, oh my God, I'm finally getting my beautiful
Wow.
adoption
It was
story.
that easy.
Um, I got my adoption paperwork, and then I started going through my adoption paperwork, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to meet you people.
Mm,
It was really off. So there's 6 of us in total, children from the same mother. Uh, 5 of us have dads. So
okay.
me and my brother have the same dad. We are the only 2 siblings that have the same dad. Um, and then going through my adoption paperwork, which is 538 pages long, um, my father is the one who molested me as a baby. And we're
Mm,
talking younger than a year old. I have reports of going to the hospital because there was blood found in my diaper. Um, then you go through story after story after story that police were called on my mother. She was living in a women's shelter with us kids. She would, uh, there was a lot of neglect, there was a lot of abuse. And then when I was removed, all of her children have been removed from her care at least
mm,
once in their life. I think she did get one or two kids back. Um, but then when you're bounced around from home to home, it's just trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma and new people. And then, yes, I was throwing 3-4 hour tantrums when I did get to adoptive home.
Right.
So I don't think that they were ready for what I was bringing. That baggage was heavy. So I don't blame them, but at the same point, I now know that I was not going to let my child find me the way that I found my family. So
Mm.
it was okay. I've
Did
learned it.
your biological brother get adopted out as well, or?
No, I was the only one who was adopted. The rest of them either aged out of the system
Mm.
or went to live with some sort of family member. So she did not get to keep, I think she only kept one, which was the youngest sibling. So, and
Yeah.
I'm a third oldest, so I'm a middle child through and through.
Wow. How do you think adoption and being an adoptee shaped your identity?
I think it is my identity, unfortunately. But I think I have learned to a point after getting even to this stage of adoption and seeing it from so many different angles that it's not all bad. Don't get me wrong. I do understand that there's beautiful stories to be told in adoption, and I think they should be celebrated. But it's changed my entire view of adoption, as in we need to stop the trauma at the source. Mama needs help.
Yeah.
My mother was screaming for help. I mean, to her in her own way, in her own. We're talking 5 children removed from her care. Does someone not see the red bells going off?
Yeah.
Either she needs help, whether that's from family or not. Our system is also built to fail. Okay, we'll take it from you. We'll take it
Yeah.
from you.
Yeah.
And then in my position of, I didn't feel that there were any resources to help me out of giving adoption. So it
Yeah.
was
What
the,
resources did you need, do you think, that
oh
would have
my
helped you keep your
God.
child?
I think I would have needed to hear that it was okay to do that and okay to think of myself versus thinking of putting a picture perfect family together because it doesn't exist. And I should have known that. But at the same point, I thought I could recreate what I didn't have.
Hmm.
Um, when I left the hospital, I went back to an apartment alone. Not a single person lived with me.
Mm.
I did not get a lot of, are you okay texts? Do you need to hang out? I didn't even know that my boobs were going to lactate. I did not
Mm.
know what was happening to me. All of a sudden, I'm waking up and I'm leaking all over the bed, and my boobs are hard as a rock. I'm crying myself to sleep because I'm now empty handed. I
Yeah.
would make those phone calls to my parents, to my family, to anybody. Help me recognize that it's going to be okay. Oh, just forget about it. He's not yours. It's not your problem anymore. Everything's fine. Just move on with your life. And I'm like, move on? What in the heck does that look like to you?
Yeah.
Because I, it caused this deep spiral, a deep, dark spiral. Suicide was on the horizon. It was
Mm.
one of those that there's no other option to get out of this because this pain is so embedded. You can't get it out. It's not like you can just go to sleep and forget about it. I
Yeah.
would have nightmares. I was telling my husband this the other night. I would have a reoccurring nightmare for years after giving birth to him. And it was one of those that something would come and take my baby from me, and I'd wake up with the baby gone. And it was like, is my subconscious telling me something? Do I need to work through something? There was no therapy. There was no, I was drunk all the time. It felt like it was the only way to shut it off.
Yeah.
And that's when the trouble started to come because it just followed the pain. It followed the cycle of trying to escape out
Yeah.
of that. And it wasn't until I got to Washington that I was able to like let go of the shame of it because adoption is so much more than just taking on a child and having your white picket fence. And I lived in a glass house as a preacher's daughter. Everybody saw exactly what they needed to see on the outside, but nobody knows what sits on the inside. Um, but if you followed the paper trail of adoption down to its core of it, you always go back to the mom. You
Yeah.
always go back to the mom. Mom needs help. And I think we've forgotten that. Mother Nature is crying. We need the help. We need the therapy, the healthcare, the support just to exist in this world at this moment. So sorry to make it bigger than what it just
No,
adoption, but it's like,
no.
come on, like if we don't get to the root of it, it's the women that need the help the most. We've been pushed down for so long. And I don't know where I would be without adoption. So don't get me wrong. I don't believe in adoption anymore. I knew at this point that if I did not choose my son again, I don't know where he would have been put because I
Hmm.
know she was at her wit's end.
Yeah.
So, and that goes to the point of she also didn't know what she was getting herself into either. Um,
Yeah, it's
Mom's,
interesting that she was having problems and he didn't even know he was adopted, but
yeah,
there's a knowing
yes,
there that
yes,
something's not right. Something's just not fitting and that acting out happens. So
exactly.
it's interesting. What surprised you when you went through the adoption process, both ways? Anything surprise you? Or anything that you thought like this needs to change?
Um, yes. When he came to visit, there was a lot of medication. And I mean a lot of medication. Um, he was on Adderall, he was on antidepressants, he was on like 3 or 4 different medications that it was ADD, ADHD. And I'm like, my God, you've just got this kid jacked up on meth. Do you understand what you're doing at the moment? No wonder you're screaming for help. But then when I finally got him and I took him to a doctor, they also agreed, we don't know why this child is on here. And they're going through doctor's notes that there's not even an actual diagnosis from a doctor. They just say that there could be, or somebody else said it. And it was like, okay, well, we're taking him off all of this. So we
Wow.
did, and everything slowed down. Everything calmed down. I mean, yes, you have to fully understand. We are talking about 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old teenager right now.
Yeah.
So no duh, there's going to be stuff that comes with that. But at the same point, I think she was trying to mask the things that you just need to pay attention a little more. Um, there's also gay was coming into the conversation, or, well, what if I wanted a transition was coming into the conversation. And I don't think that she was fully prepared to do that
Yeah.
because there was a religious background to it.
Hmm.
And it was like, wait, no, not a child of ours.
Right.
And it was like, no, there is something that I've learned in parenting the other 2 children that I just got it. Teenagers, at least. I didn't have to do the baby stage. Thank you, Jesus. But at the same time, teenagers, whew, I don't know. I don't know which one I'd want, but
Yeah,
I've at least been blessed with teenagers. So I felt like I was prepared for this one. But you can't just feed a medication and hope the problems that you have every day just go away. No, you
exactly.
need to like
Get to the root of
parent.
why. Get to the root
So
of why instead of just
now it
trying to
feels like a
mask it with a
return to
bunch of
sender.
medication.
That's how it feels like. That's what he calls himself, return to sender. And I'm like, I don't know if
Oh,
that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'll take you back. I love you.
yeah. Oh my gosh. How do you think he's adjusted and like what conversations, what kind of conversations do you have with him? I mean, he probably has a lot to unpack.
Yes, we've kind of gone through stages. because you can also tell at this age they don't know their words yet. And I say that politely, but they're at a stage where there's a lot of emotions and hormonal things going on that they don't even know how to explain, let alone throw an adoption on top of it, let alone a brand new environment and new mom. And okay, so we're working on getting them into therapy at the moment, but we've at least brought up the contrast of you did not know you're adopted, and there is underlying trauma there. And sometimes you can see things peek through. So we'll have those conversations of, okay, well, why are you crying right now? Because I don't want to blame everything on hormones, because there's also other things going on in his life.
Yeah.
His first school year was a little difficult, just in the aspect of you're the new kid in school now. You have to refit into an entire scenario. But yet I'm not your adoptive mom. So don't come and talk to me like I'm your adoptive mom. I'm going to work with you and we'll have those conversations. But I think he just got so used to, well, you're saying no to me, so I'm going to push back 10 more boundaries and push back 10 more. It's like, okay, hold on. I will give if you give. And we're learning those boundaries of,
Right.
there's some things you can get away with, and I'm starting to pick my battles with this one, but there's also a lot of things you got to deal with. And they're daily things. They're small things, but the small things trigger the big things. So
Yeah.
if we can talk about them now, open those conversations, and we're an open house policy. Nothing is off the table. I want you to talk about sex, because by the time you are having sex, I don't need you afraid of it or fearing what's coming. We have a lot of religious conversations too, of not saying what you can and cannot believe in, but giving you a realistic view of all and any. So you are aware and you can make that conscious decision. I feel now that you should be educated
Yeah.
of anything and everything, because everything's been kept from him for so long that I'm like, no, I'm going to feed you all the information I can. So
Yeah.
open conversation.
That's good. At one point, you mentioned survivor guilt. What did you
Oh,
mean by that?
that was hard. Um, when you have the opportunity, or even the conversation gets brought up of being able to have your child back, it's the most exciting thing in the world. It is what every single birth mother, any mother, would dream of having. And I am in a lot of support groups on Facebook that I see them continuously. Oh, I'm thinking about it. Oh, I'm a year past it and it kills me. Oh, wait, I got mine back. I'm really sorry that you're still sitting in your pain. But I know what that pain looks like. So I want to get into that pain with them and know that you're not alone in that pain. I know what that feels like, but I'm also going through the other side of this. Nobody wants to see your beautiful success story when they're sitting in the middle of that pain.
In the pain.
So it was kind of hard to balance that yes, I'm so excited, but you got to understand you are the 1% who ever gets to experience this. And I wish I could give that experience to someone who may need it more than me. But at the same time, I'm remembering that it's okay to think of myself. It's okay to accept that I do deserve this. I do want to honor this as a blessing and not a survivor's guilt situation, you know.
Yeah.
But it was hard.
Yeah, I bet. What advice would you give someone that's thinking about putting their child up for adoption?
I want you to do all of your research, because as much as the decision is yours, you're also going to be giving somebody something that you probably were not intending to give, the trauma that goes with it. If you can't, I seek therapy, make sure you're fully prepared for what's going to come down the line for you, but make sure you find clarity before any decision is made, because the regret runs deep. The regret is painful. And vet your people that you're looking at. Don't just willy-nilly decide, it's whatever. Because that's now you're keeping the life and you don't care about it. Like I'm not saying that you don't, but don't just willy-nilly make that decision. Think twice, think deep, make sure the other people are fully prepared for what they're about to walk into. And the people that are looking to adopt, make sure you know what you're welcoming into your house. Not and fully understand that not everybody is going to get the beautiful rainbows and sunshine, butterflies swirling around. It doesn't always work like that.
Yeah.
Read up on it, listen to the people that have been through adoption in any format, because there's a story on every end, and they're dark, they're deep, they're pain, real pain, pain that can't be seen. All I wanted to do was be heard in those moments when nobody actually listened. You could hear a pin drop, but my thoughts were so loud. Be aware. And if
Yeah.
you can, put the effort in.
Yeah. There's a new study that's going to be coming out because I know everybody has heard that adoptees are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide than their counterparts of non-adoptees. But there's a new study that's coming out where it's saying that adoptees are 38.7 more times likely to attempt suicide, and birth mothers are 40 times.
It breaks my heart because I know what that hole looks like. I know what that emptiness looks like. Because then you're told daily, well, just get over it.
Yeah.
Move on. It's not yours. And you
Yeah.
can't get out of bed, you can't take a shower, you can't eat. You're either trying to get rid of the milk out of your boobs, you don't know what to do with your body. It's the everlast haunting. You can't hear a baby scream. You can't hear a baby cry. I
Yeah.
couldn't be happy that somebody was pregnant. I couldn't be happy that a toddler was running up to me. I know that. And I wish I could just stand there with a warning sign. Think twice, unless you are fully prepared for what you're about to walk into. But that's where it goes back to the
How
world
can
needs
you
to pay
be?
attention to their mothers.
Yeah.
The moms
How
need
can you
help.
be?
Oh,
Yeah. I don't know how you can prepare to turn your back on your instincts, that
yeah,
primal instinct. Like, how can
yeah.
you just flick a switch, turn that off? It just doesn't happen.
And
And not
everybody's
without
different.
trauma, not without
Oh
trauma.
God, no.
Yeah. Yeah. So you kind of alluded, what's your opinion about adoption now that you've worn all the hats?
I mean, I continue to say that I see the good because I want to recognize the people that have gone through it and had good experiences, but I don't recommend it. Um, as much as I suffered for it, my child is now going to suffer for it in his own way, and it's going to follow him the rest of his life. He's only 14. 14. What is 21 going to look like? What is 30 going to look like? What is 60 going to look like? He was rejected twice, if you look at it. It wasn't once, it was twice. And that psychologically, as an adoptee, I couldn't even imagine going through mine twice. But no, it hurts too many people. Um, I saw this yesterday, and I could have torn the TV off the wall and thrown it out the window. I was so mad. I was I was making food because the football game was on, and it was all local commercials, and it was about adoption, and it was more or less to the effect of there's a lot of teenagers in the foster care system that could use good people like you. And then it went away. Why are we promoting children like they're animals on TV? Feel bad for the children. What makes this right in America that we are promoting children to just pick and choose which ones we want or like or don't want or can't take care of? Or, I mean, maybe
Yeah.
I'm looking at it differently, but oh, it
Yeah.
makes me cringe because those other parents, like my child's adoptive parents, that are looking to rehome their
Yeah.
adoptive children. And once I dug into that side of it, there are people placing pictures of children on Facebook right now trying to rehome their already adoptive behavioral issues. They came in with too much than we can handle. Pay attention before you
Yep.
just walk into adoption so free willy. You
Yep.
need to know what you're walking into because it's hurting too many children and you're
Yeah.
causing trauma that will follow them for the rest of their lives,
Well, and I
let
put that
alone
on the
suicide.
agencies. Yeah. The
Ooh,
agencies they're not, they're
no,
not
they are
saying any of this.
money, 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 money. That is
It's gonna
all
be
that is.
great. It's gonna be
Okay,
great.
but FYI, no, unless you are working with some miracle worker agency, no mom sees that money. That goes straight to the agency.
Yeah.
No adoptive mom sees that.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't put them in a hotel. They don't take care of them. They don't put them with all the therapy that they need. They don't do that. That's
You
to
mean
paint a
the
pretty
birth mom?
picture. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
birth mom.
The birth
Yeah.
mom is forgotten about.
Yeah,
You're
it's
you're
like you're
taken care of until the package is
exactly.
received.
Yep.
Bye.
Yep. Then you're kicked out the door. Go live your
Yes.
life. You'll forget. It's fine. Yeah. That's when you really need the help.
Yes.
Well, you needed it before too, but after, if you do give your child up, that is really when you
And I
need
think
some
that's
help.
where my motivation and my drive comes in, is for the after the hospital experience,
Yeah.
because that's when they need the pieces picked up. They can't do that themselves. They need someone to care for them after the medical procedure that just happened, because even that is forgotten about. They don't know how to take care of themselves afterwards, especially if this is your first. You have no
Yeah.
idea,
Right.
especially if you have no family behind you who's going to help support you. We need proper housing for those women so they can get back on their feet, because a lot of women were like me that don't have a job or family or support, and then they're now homeless and hoping I'll never see my kids again. I
Yeah.
knew I had to pull myself up and move on to be able to get out of my situation, but not everybody has that kind of strength or
No.
that drive out of it. But that's where my mission comes in. The women
Yeah.
afterwards need to be taken care of.
Yeah, definitely. What would you like struggling adoptees to know?
Um, Hold on. I want I want adoptees to know that no matter where you are in life, your mother has a hole in her heart because you're not there. There is not a single mother that does not have her child in her care that does not think about that child. I mean, until you can prove me wrong, there's not a mom that hasn't thought about that child. So that adoptee needs to know, even because I was removed from my mother thought about me. My birthday always came across her heart on my birthday because that day was so ingrained in her head. You were always loved. You were always thought about, no matter what your situation was that got you to the point that you were always thought about. There's not always a way out, but until your mother can come and care for you again, you need to think of yourself and take care of yourself because nobody else is going to. So pick yourself up. It's going to be okay. You will find your mom. That primal instinct will always come. It's like two strings that always end up meeting in the middle. It's always there. Keep going because you will find her eventually.
Yeah. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you want to say we haven't touched on?
I don't think so, other than adoption has so many different avenues and paths. Everyone is so unique in their stories, but shout them from the rooftops, because there are too many people like us that don't keep telling their stories. You can't scream it loud enough before somebody realizes this adoption, I call them cattle. They're just rolling children out like they're cattle at this time. And if we don't stop it at the source, it needs to get taken care of. Those children need to be recognized. We need to stop fantasizing this beautiful story of adoption. I want to recognize those, but 90% of those children have trauma that you will never see. You are not the one sitting in their minds. Pay attention, because our most vulnerable need it right now.
Yeah.
Our children need it the most. And so do our moms. Recognize your moms.
Yeah.
Always, you see somebody pregnant, talk to them. It's going to be okay. Give them support, because those are the ones who need it the most. Take care of your moms.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your unique story today. And I was super excited to talk to you, because it's obviously very rare to have the whole triad wrapped up into one person.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing your insight, and then just kind of pulling it all together, and letting us know, like, because you've had all those different views, you know, what you got from that and what you pulled from that.
Yes.
So thanks so much for coming on. Thank you, Karma Crew, for joining us today for this interview. And as always, take what you need and leave what you don't. And always remember to mind your own karma. I'll see you next time.
This podcast is created for educational purposes by the telling of adoption experiences. The views expressed in this podcast may not be those of the host or Mind Your Own Karma.